at our time. A warm welcome to each one of you. It's wonderful to gather together and practice this way, taking care of our lives with the Dhamma. Beautiful. So this is Sunday Sounds of Dhamma, and as I think all of you know, it's about half an hour of guided meditation, half an hour of talk, half an hour for questions, reflections, and dedication of merit. And announcements for today. So the autumn gathering is coming up very soon, October 11th at 11 a.m. And folks are welcome either virtually or in person. Everyone is welcome. It's a very, very joyous event every year. We invite people to bring some poetry or something they want to share, some reflection about Sangha. It's really a beautiful time. And registration's open for the class in December, online class, the retreat in November. And the vihara, just so you know, any folks who are planning on coming in person, the vihara is closed from Wednesday through Friday of this week. Going to be not having the online, so the Wednesday morning meditation will happen virtually, and all the other events as usual. But no sutta contemplation on Thursday. And let's see, I think that's all the announcements for this morning. Welcome, Maya Kemanandi. Welcome, Maria Alejandra. Bienvenida. Welcome, Kristen. All right. Great. So for this morning's meditation, we're going to be continuing on our informal walk through the 4 foundations of mindfulness this week. No worries if you haven't been here for the other talks. But so we're going to explore mental qualities, just having a look at what's happening, what's some of the content that is in the mind, as distinct from the process that is occurring in the mind. So, but as always, we begin with the body and tuning into the body. So you can take a moment and settle into your relaxed and upright meditation posture. Sensing the weight of the body on your seat. Perhaps aware of the earthiness of the body, the firmness, the solidity, the weight. aware of the stability, natural stability of the body, even amidst small movements of breath and balance. Perhaps you notice some pleasant or unpleasant feelings in the body, or just a general sense of neutral feeling. And at some point, the mental activity comes to the forefront. Just receiving mental activity as it arises and ceases. gently observing, just softening any judgments or concerns about the thoughts. Just a gentle receptivity. Staying curious in the present moment about thoughts. Perhaps checking in to see if there's any strong sensation of wanting, any strong aversion or irritation in the mind. Or a sense of confusion, not clear. Shifting from that receptivity into a little bit more discernment. From mindfulness to investigation. aware of what's present in mental activity from moment to moment. What's the quality of the mind? And perhaps also aware of what's absent. Is greed absent from the mind? Is hatred absent from the mind? Attending to mental activity moment by moment. so nice that we get to attend to this experience and just be here with this body and mind. Even as there is the effort to know it, to study it. Beautiful. So that brings us to the Dhamma talk. And as usual, I'd like to start with the homage to the Triple Gem. So if everyone online can keep their mics muted, except for Claudia, who's interpreting, you're all welcome to chant along if you would like, or just let it wash over you. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Mindfulness is described in the early teachings as one of the most important practices that we can apply in our lives. And for that reason, we have many different teachings about how to establish mindfulness, how to begin to develop that present moment, receptive, gentle awareness, attention. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing a sort of informal series of talks on the Satipatthana Sutta and the four foundations of mindfulness, one of the, I would say, most well-known of the early Buddhist teachings. And in this sutta, the Buddha speaks about the conditions that are necessary for establishing mindfulness. So things like being keen or ardor, as Bhikkhu Bodhi likes to translate it, this earnestness in practice, and sampajana, so something like clear comprehension or knowing well. And those conditions are don't need to be perfected in order for us to begin doing this practice. Otherwise, you would never be able to begin, I would suggest. And nonetheless, it's good to try to apply those, to be ready in that sense. And then there are the four factors themselves. So the four foundations of mindfulness, or the four establishments of mindfulness, or you could say the categories of experience on which we can, and arguably the Buddha said should, establish mindfulness, are body, feeling tones, or this sort of very primitive sense of the pleasantness or unpleasantness of experience, the mind, and the mental qualities, or dhammas actually is the word that's used there. In this case, it can be translated, Bhikkhu Bodhi likes to translate it as mental qualities, or sometimes I like to translate it as principles. Principles. And so today I want to speak a little bit about that fourth one, as we've touched on the other ones so far. And the fourth foundation of mindfulness is an extensive one, very much like the body. There are many, many different aspects that are suggested here by the Buddha. So just this one sutta alone, as I mentioned before, includes dozens. If you were to take up these teachings individually, these foundations individually that are named in the sutta, that already is dozens of different ways of meditating, just to be mindful of each one of these different types of experience. So I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that you try to string them all together like that in individual meditations. But it is, I think, very helpful to work with all four establishments, to really learn how to be able to apply the mind to all four different types or different categories of experience. That flexibility, that malleability of the mind is very, very useful. To give you a metaphor, to me, it feels like the way that fish, like salmon, when they're going upstream, they can kind of wiggle between the rocks, and they can apply their bodies in such a way that they're actually going against the stream. And that malleability of the mind is like that ability of the fish to kind of work its way through experience against the stream of our habits, against the stream of our resistance or our ignorance or our delusion. Not in a way that's harsh, right? Rather, it's a way that actually finds this harmony among those things. Kind of interesting. So looking at the fourth establishment, as I said, is very extensive. So I'm not going to cover all of it today. And but again, this is Middle Length Discourse number 10, the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. And in this one, the Buddha begins with the 5 hindrances. And then, and so let me say a few words about the 5 hindrances. So what are the 5 hindrances? Sense desire, ill will or aversion, or also sometimes anger, vyapada. Sloth and torpor, those are funny old words for dullness and a kind of sluggishness in the mind or body. Restlessness and remorse. Restlessness and remorse. I think a quality that a lot of contemporary practitioners struggle with. And doubt. So those are the 5. And we could spend the whole talk today actually talking about the 5 hindrances. We could do a whole class on them. One time I was on retreat and I did I was feeling this hindrances very strongly at the beginning of this 3-week solitary retreat that I was going to do. And so I spent the first several days, like maybe 5 days or so, just watercolor painting, making paintings of the hindrances and what I understood to be going on. What did that? It was a different, like a nonverbal way of kind of trying to process what the hindrances meant. But just to say briefly, the hindrances are qualities that are present in the mind, right? And what that means is that they're not permanent. They, like all other phenomena, are qualities of the mind that are arising and passing away. They are not truly obstructions per se, right? It's simply attributes of the mind that make it more difficult to be clear, to see clearly, observe clearly, experience clearly the nature of phenomena, right? The arising and ceasing and interdependent nature of phenomena. Because we get caught up in making something out of those experiences of arising and ceasing or of the content that's there. So there's nothing wrong with you. These are not permanent states. So your relationship to these states can be one of, oh, right, this is workable. Like any other state of mind, this is workable. There are specific so-called antidotes or so-called responses to the various hindrances, right? So, for example, for sense desire, so sense desire, like you're sitting on your cushion and you are obsessing about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or food, or your beach vacation, or whatever it is, right? Sense desire. And for sense desire, one of the antidotes is said to be like thinking about the grossness of the body. Gross in terms of not subtle, but also gross in terms of like yuck. Right? So that may or may not work for you as an antidote to those issues. Right? But each one of us finds our way of noticing the tendencies, the kinds of, most of us have a tendency to sort of settle on one or the other of the hindrances frequently. For me, oftentimes it was restlessness. So the antidote to restlessness, I'm sorry to say, is sitting still. So we each find our way of working with these things. But if I want to leave you with any impression whatsoever about the hindrances, it's that they are, you could say, they certainly aren't permanent, but they also aren't even things that define you. Even to say, I am a restless person, that is mistaken view. That's wrong view. Right? It's that more like the Irish way of saying it, restlessness is upon me at this time. Right? Restlessness is upon me at this time. And the way that we talk about it, even to ourselves, can make a difference. So just to be aware of how you work with the hindrances. Yeah? Not to take them on as our identity, even for short periods of time. All right, and then the Buddha speaks about the 5 aggregates. So I spoke in great detail about the 5 aggregates, I believe, during a few talks ago when we talked about feeling tones. Feeling tones, which is the second foundation of mindfulness, is one of the 5 aggregates. So you also see the way in which the early Buddhist teachings are they sort of loop around each other. The Buddha comes back again and again to these same themes, even within the same sutta. Yeah. So I'm not going to go into the 5 aggregates right now. There are quite a lot of teachings that I've given around that. And then the 6 sense bases. So the sense bases or sense fields is also a way of relating to the body, and the you could say the kind of doorways of experience. That's one way to relate to it. And finally, the 7 factors. So not finally, because after the 7 factors comes the 4 noble truths, and maybe I will save that for another day. But what I would like to really focus on today is the 7 factors of awakening. In Pali, it's Sambojjhanga, or just Bojjhanga. Sam is good or well or great, and Bo is the 7, and Jhanga, or actually Boj, is the 7, and Anga is like a limb or an aspect, a factor. That's why we call it the 7 factors. Huh? And so I'm just going to name them, and you don't, of course, there's no quiz later, so I'll try to talk a little bit about how they work together as a way of helping you perhaps relate to them. So there's mindfulness, investigation, energy or effort, and then joy, tranquility, tranquility, and then concentration, and then equanimity. Okay, those are the 7 factors. And so if one way to think about them is there are 3 groups. There's mindfulness. Mindfulness is always helpful. The Buddha actually states that in a couple of suttas. Mindfulness is always helpful. So it has first place in the list of the awakening factors. Mind you that all 7 factors are necessary for enlightenment. They are necessary qualities. All 7 factors have to be present at the same time for enlightenment to occur, or even for insight, I would suggest. And I will also say this, that they represent the qualities of a mind that has experienced insight or has experienced awakening. Right? So mindfulness is the first one right off the bat. And then, and that is again this receptivity, this beautiful present moment, non-judgmental, receptive form of attention. Then, however, that's not sufficient. Mindfulness is necessary, but not sufficient. Right? Then you get into the other factors. And the other factors break up into the factors that are more stimulating and the factors that are more relaxing. Yeah. So investigate, and they're not usually considered to be developed in sequence. There is one sutta in which Venerable Sariputta, actually, one of the Buddha's great students, describes them that way. But for the most part, the factors don't have to be done in any particular order. It's not like you're doing a little checklist in your meditation. Oh, first I do this and then I do that. There are suttas like that, many of them, but this is not one of them. The factors can come together in different orders or at different times. But investigation is, you could say, this discerning quality, that ability that we have to notice the difference between different states. So we notice that in the 3rd foundation of mindfulness also, right? I talked about that last week, that the Buddha speaks about noticing whether there is greed, as I referred to in the meditation this morning, like strong desire. Right? Noticing whether that's in the mind or noticing whether it's absent. So in order to know whether it's absent, to know that it's present, that's mindfulness. To know that it's absent, that's investigation. To be able to discern between other states and say, oh, what's here is not that thing, something else. Yeah. So, so investigation is crucial. We need to be able to start to understand with a lot of detail, in a lot of detail and a lot of specificity, what is it that we are observing? What is the experience that is being received mindfully? Yeah. And then the next factor is effort, right? So effort or energy is very important. And I want to talk about effort in relationship to two of the other factors. So effort and then tranquility or calmness and equanimity. Because sometimes people struggle with this. How can you have all of those three things at the same time? How do you have effort and still be peaceful and still find your equanimity? Right? So let me say a little bit about tranquility means, just to give you what they are, and then we can talk about the relationships among them. So tranquility means both peacefulness or calmness, a settled feeling in body and mind. It's very simple. The Pali word is passaddhi. It's not anything complicated. Equanimity, on the other hand, is a very complex term. The Buddha actually described three different kinds of equanimity in the Salayatavana Vivanga, in the analysis of the six sense basis. The Buddha describes three different kinds of equanimity, not just one. Here, we just have the one as the factor. And I would suggest that this kind of factor of equanimity for awakening has to do with being able to be present, being able to be not set off balance by the diversity of experience so that you stop clinging to it, you stop identifying with it. Okay? So that is kind of rolling the three into one statement. Not set off balance by the diversity of experience so that you can not cling to it, not identify it as a solid self. That's equanimity, as that's the kind of equanimity that's necessary for waking up. So a lot of people struggle with this idea of making effort and still finding tranquility in the mind. Right? But what this teaching is telling us is that the effort that we are making is to find the harmony, the ease that is already there. To find our ability to be with the nature of phenomena. Not how we want phenomena to be, but what's actually happening. Right? So the effort that we are bringing is this effort of, again, this effort of investigation, this effort of staying on the cushion, this effort of being still and steady. All of those things are effort, right? Those are choices that we make. Indeed, all of your life, every moment of your life is effort. So the invitation is to live your life according to this understanding, according to this knowing that arises out of your practice, out of your mindfulness, out of your investigation. Right? Even that is hard. Even that is a very demanding practice. I remember I was at Tassajara, a Zen monastery out in the mountains in California. many years back, and the head student was giving a talk. So Graham was giving the talk, and Graham said, somebody asked Graham a question, said, well, I have these very strong habits and I can't break them, even though I know that they're bad habits. I have these bad habits. How do I break them? And Graham's response was this. He said, well, so you know that you have this bad habit and that it's harmful. So you've already done the first step. And then the next step is you don't break them. You don't, and then 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 you don't. But then one day you do. That was Graham's answer to the question. Meaning sometimes it takes a while for our life to come into alignment with our understanding. That's also effort. That's also effort. And when that kind of effort happens, then joy, the next factor, right? Joy. Why? Because such a relief. It's such a tremendous relief. To set down your resistance to the truths of your life. In whatever small degree you can do that, you will experience relief. And if you do that completely, you will experience awakening. Because the truths of your life are right here, being demonstrated all the time, waiting for you to show up and be understanding them in accord with them. Yeah. So this is how effort and tranquility and equanimity works together. You see, they're not in opposition at all. Great. So the other factor is that I haven't mentioned yet, or I haven't spoken about yet, is concentration, or sometimes translated as immersion, samadhi. So again, mindfulness by itself is not sufficient. Concentration is a necessary factor on the path. And that doesn't mean that you have to become an expert at the most sublime states. There are quite sublime states that are accessible. And at least seems to me that they are accessible to all of us. But the type of concentration that is necessary is the persistence of the mind is the most important part there, right? So when we think about the factors of jhana, for example, of the very deep states of concentration, it takes a lot more than that. It includes the joy, actually, which is kind of interesting. But more importantly, I think the concentration is about being able to apply the mind with some continuity. And that continuity of attention is very, very important. That continuity of attention, in a sense, it gives you the feeling that the mind has slowed down because you're not skipping over so much of your experience. You know, a lot of times what happens is that there are moments of experience, moments of sensation happening in the mind. And we're kind of like skipping a rock over that. We're like touching only a fraction of them. But with practice, with some effort, with some time, usually in meditation, you can touch more of them and begin to see more and more of the experience. And it feels like it's slowing down because of that, right? Because if you had 10 moments of experience and you hopped from 1 to 10, that feels faster, so to speak, than if you saw 8 out of the 10 of them. Yeah, am I making myself clear? So this ability of concentration, what concentration brings to the table in the process of awakening is this persistence that we stay and 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 we stay until we observe something that we haven't observed before. So those are the 7 factors of enlightenment, and that's a little bit about how they work together. So again, so just to give you the sort of traditional view, again, mindfulness, always useful. Investigation, effort, and joy are the stimulating factors. So if you sit down and you feel like your mind is racing, don't do a lot of investigation, please. That's not the most helpful thing to start out with, right? That's the opposite of what you need. You need the other 3 factors, right? Tranquility, just sit still as best you can. Yeah, concentration, that persistence of the mind. Okay, I'm just trying to stay with it. I'm trying to stay with it in as much detail, in as much intimacy as I can muster. And equanimity, not getting set off balance by what you see or what you feel. So, and that sense of balance is crucial. This is why the Buddha speaks about them in these ways and speaks about them as a whole, right? Because the natural habit of the mind is that whatever we do often becomes a tendency. It becomes the thing that we want to do, right? The thing that you naturally hop to. But to find balance requires more thoughtfulness than that. It requires more effort. It requires more intentionality. So just remember that in your practice, that there are many qualities that can come together in ways that are beneficial. And you might think, oh, I've landed on this one particular thing, which is the best, the most delicious. But above all, balance is what helps us to be fully awake. Thank you. That's what I wanted to share with you this beautiful Sunday. And now we have some time for questions, comments, reflections on either the talk or the meditation or something going on with your practice. Somebody once told me that when there are no questions, it means you're still thinking. Mm-hmm. Let's see. here. Okay.
I have a question.
Brian, thank you. Here. So please do speak into the mic and speak slowly so that our lovely interpreter can let the folks know in Spanish as well. That's right. The little circle is the part that you need to have close to your mouth.
Thank you for the insights. The 7 factors remind me or sound a lot like the Eightfold Path. Could you comment on similarities, differences?
So the key difference is that the Eightfold Path begins with, or you could say includes, because it's not the first couple of steps that are mentioned, but it's the next 3, ethics, right? So right action, right speech, right livelihood, those are considered to be sila, virtue or ethics or morality. All of those things are somewhat unified, you could say, in Buddhism. In other traditions, they're slightly different. But so that's the main difference, is that the Eightfold Path talks about what we call the 3 pillars, and the 3 pillars are sila, ethics. So you have to have this ethical foundation, according to the Buddha and the early teachers. If we're not making skillful choices in our lives, then we will have a lot of impediments to our practice, because we're having these harsh karmic outcomes coming. So that's the key difference. The 7 factors is it aligns to a large degree with some of the other aspects of the Eightfold Path, right? Because you have the things that are related to meditation and wisdom, right? So those are,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you need the ethical foundation to start. Is that
You need the ethical foundation if your path is going to be able to unfold.
Okay.
Yeah, basically. Otherwise, you tend to get stuck because
So
you're
without
mired
that,
down.
you can't develop the 7 factors that will not come together without the first part, the ethical foundation.
Right. That you will not have the conditions in your life such that you'll be able to practice well enough to develop the factors. Now, saying all this aloud, the other thing that I'm reminded of is, as I have mentioned before, that there are all sorts of people in the Sangha. There are all sorts of people who have made mistakes in their lives and done unethical things. And the path always lets you start new. So you can make the choice and say, okay, from this point, I will make ethical choices, and then carry that out. Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, you're not doomed if you have been living an unethical life prior to now, that you can't practice the path in any way. It doesn't mean that. But it does mean that if you want to practice the path, you need to be making skillful choices so that your life will have those beneficial supports for you. Yeah. Okay, great. Yes, Jen, please.
Thanks for that talk. It was very insightful. And one of the things that came up during the talk was I noticed that sometimes I have a tendency to, whenever I feel maybe an unpleasant feeling, that I go into immediate analyze mode, over it. Maybe where's that coming from, or how is this caused, or is there a way to think about it in a way to make it more pleasant? And in the beginning, it feels more expansive and open, but after a while, I can notice that there's a bit of a tightening where it's okay, maybe I'm over efforting here, and maybe the best thing is to lean on more of the later factors of awakening to kind of return back. And there are moments where sometimes there's 2 parts of me where I notice it's happening and I know that's kind of the better way to go, but it's kind of hard to pull out of it because it's maybe got deep mental formation or like a habit energy that they have. So I wonder
Yes.
if you had any like specific advice on like how to really like make that change. And it's kind of been, yeah, win some, lose some, like in those
Yes.
moments too.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you for the question. And I, it might be helpful for you to do for some time, a kind of what we would call a labeling practice or a kind of identification practice. So just spending some time on that second foundation of mindfulness of feeling tone, just like pleasant, unpleasant, 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 neutral, neutral, pleasant, and just be doing that kind of, not allowing yourself, in other words, to go any further with it. Because I think if you do that practice for a while, what it does is it develops, it's kind of teaching the mind like, right, each thing is just like, it's a little spark of something, and it sort of opens up a little bit more choice point between each thing, rather than you get kind of sucked in by the unpleasant ones. You just start to just do some of the labeling practice for a little while. And I would say the other thing is that similarly, when you're doing investigation of an unpleasant, feeling tone, the idea would be to maybe just find one or two supporting conditions, and that's it, right? Like that feeling tone came, that unpleasant feeling came because I heard a plane and I related that to somebody that I'm missing, period.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because it is, you could say, like this is the teaching that we can learn from the five aggregates, actually, that each moment of experience and then our response or reaction to that is kind of a little contained, section if we let it be, right? And then it can move on to something else. How does that sound?
Yeah, that was pretty helpful.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
And then in my experience and the times I was more successful, I think.
Okay, wait.
Oh,
Now,
sorry.
slowly,
Sorry.
please.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. That was really helpful. And I would say in some of the reflecting back on the times where I was more successful at doing so, it kind of felt like I kind of stopped it at the spark or just labeled it or just mentioned one or two things. So I'll be able to relate to that and kind of lean on kind of what worked and that gave me more
Yes.
clarity. So
Exactly, exactly. And that's also an important reflection there, Jet, that you can hang on to it if you have more to say. That remembering the times that we've done well with our practice, remembering the times that we have seen how the practice worked, those are also beautiful things to do, just like when you need a little pick-me-up, there's a Pali word for that called pamoja, this kind of joy that comes from remembering, oh yeah, right, it was working, it did work at this point in time, rather than having that be yet another expectation, right? Or like yet another rule, like, oh, I should be able to do it like that every time. So great. Okay, Jet, thank you. Deborah has her hand up.
Hello, everybody. I'm in Ethiopia, so I'm just kind of amazed to be able to talk to you. So thank you once again for that wonderful Dharma talk. I want to pick up on the racing mind. That's been happening a lot to me lately. And your wise guidance about sitting still, persistence, coming back again. We've been doing in our class, focus on the five aggregates, the Vedana, the different on the body, the different aggregates. And for a long time now, I haven't done metta. And I find that, and I know you do it every day. And I think I'm wondering what would be what you would advise on that. How to blend in. Trying to do, put energy and effort into going along with this progression that we're doing, but also, I'm finding that metta has always been really a helpful practice for me. So I guess I don't know why I'm not doing it, but maybe I just need to be doing more of everything.
Maybe. So a couple of things about racing mind. Let me start with that, and then we can talk about metta. So typically what's happening there is that there are thoughts about your thoughts or reactions about your reactions, right? There's a way in which there are sankharas, we would say, right, that are building up on previous sankharas or on previous perceptions. So one way to think about allowing the mind just to slow down on its own is to see if you can put down judgment about what's happening in the mind. Like even that racing mind is not okay. Do you know what I mean? Like just letting it be whatever it is and not adding any kind of energy there. But little by little, sometimes it's helpful for people to have this metaphor of like sitting on the bank of the river, like thoughts are just leaves in the stream, and you park yourself on sitting on the bank on the river. That's the observer. The observer eventually needs to collapse, needs to disappear in order for you to have deep, deep insight. But for when the mind is very caught up in itself, sometimes it's helpful to actually be sitting on the bank of the river and just knowing the one that's looking, right? And letting the other thoughts just be leaves. Like we don't argue with leaves, we don't bother with leaves, we just let leaves be leaves, like that. So that's one thought about it. As for metta, yes, I always put in a plug for metta whenever possible. So metta is loving kindness, and the metta meditation in which you are you're sort of imbuing the mind, pervading the mind, filling the mind up with metta, whether you envision that as a light or an energy or just an idea of pervasiveness. That is very, very helpful for calming the mind, right? Because what you're doing is that you metta, if you can, to the extent that you can feel the mind, let's put it that way, or feel like the mind is pervaded by metta, then it kind of squeezes out everything else. You're just relating to metta as a single object. Even if it's a big, fuzzy, bright, white object, it's still one. Do you see what I'm saying? Versus when we are observing the mind stream, what we're doing is, right? We are observing in as rapid succession as we can, a large series of different kinds of objects, right? So it's a very different skill, and it's helpful, right? Because it teaches the mind, right. We have room for everything. That's the boundless quality of metta. The reason why metta is so grounding is the boundless quality of metta. Oh, right. We have room for everything. We're just going to focus on this one big, squishy, pleasant thing for a while. But it helps to feel that vastness. Okay. So, Brian, did you feel like you got enough of an answer to your question on the Eightfold Path? Should we come back to that. You have to take the mic from him if you're going to do that. Oh, wait. Richard, oh, go ahead.
I was just in my mind going through the factors, the Eightfold Path and the response. I always end up back with the Bodhidharma and his interview with the emperor.
Uh-huh. Don't know.
Yeah, yeah, who is this who stands before me?
Don't know. Right.
But vast emptiness, nothing sacred.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by the sutras and the depth, intelligence, experience of this man, whoever he was, all we hear about him. And so bringing it back to, as you just said, with the metta being just one factor. And I found I didn't really get it or appreciate it when I read the book by the West Virginia monk about loving kindness. And I want everybody to be happy and everybody to be successful and healthy and all that. And it's like, that's like praying for me. But the one factor he did point out clearly was you have to start with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be loving, clear with yourself, to yourself. And this past week, I found myself, I said, you're too demanding. You're demanding too much of yourself. I feel in some respects, the window's closing, I'm getting older. I mean, there are things that I still want to accomplish. And it's a desire that is like, let it go, just let it go. So,
okay.
But I still go back, and to me, the ethical foundation is the precepts. So,
Yes.
just keep those in mind, follow them day to day.
Yes.
And once you've done that everything else, stay on the cushion, and you can't do too much wrong.
Okay, great. Okay. So I won't rattle off the 8 factors right now. Richard.
Thank you for your wonderful talk. My question is about several things here. Is it restlessness and remorse? I recently heard a talk where they described restlessness being related to anxiety. And the idea that these are qualities of the mind and they come and go. Thank you for that. That was very hopeful. And when you think about investigation, is investigation related to discerning the hindrances?
Investigation is related to discerning everything. In other
Everything.
words, yeah, anything. Anytime
Suffering?
that we do anything, anytime that we try to understand the nature of the mind rather than just receive what's happening, that's investigation. If we're doing it with skillfulness, if we're doing it by applying our attention in a skillful way, that's investigation of Dhammas. Yeah, Dhammadīpā. So it's not just about seeing the hindrances, in other words, Richard. It's about seeing the actual, the nature of what's in front of us, the nature of what's expressing itself as us.
Right, like I'm feeling anger right now, or I'm experiencing anger, or I'm experiencing confusion, or I'm experiencing just noticing what's showing up.
No, so
No.
that's mindfulness, is noticing what's showing up. Investigation is being able to discern what why it's there, or compare it to another situation,
Okay.
or understand the supporting conditions, or that's what I'm saying is about understanding what's going on there. Mindfulness is what can say, yes, right. This is, I receive a moment of anger, I receive a moment of delusion. Yes, I know I've made a mistake. Okay, right. That's mindful attention to the sankhara of that. But investigation is what enables us to kind of understand how it all fits together and how it all breaks apart, actually. Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I wrote down examples of investigation, so thank you.
Okay.
One more thing is letting go effort.
Well, it can be intentional. Sometimes you just say, okay, I don't want to have this thought for the thousandth and thousandth and one time. I really am just going to let that go. It can be. But, you could say when there is a deep understanding that the thing is already going, then letting go is just the natural thing to do. That doesn't require a lot of choice at that point.
Thank
Because
you.
it's all already going.
It's gone. It's fading away. It's ceasing. It's going away. Yes, that's true.
Gone before you said gone.
Right. Where's the suffering from yesterday, as I like to think?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you talked about equanimity, I was reminded of the Bodhidharma doll, the little doll with the round bottom. Eyes. It's just, rocks, and then it gets back to normal, and then it rocks and gets back to normal.
Weevils.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Claudia, apenas tenemos un momentico, pero te voy a quitar de la interpretación. Okay,
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So yeah, I was wondering when Richard said, because in the Yoga Sutras it says effort without effort. Like it's a place where you want to make effort, but then at the end you want to feel there's no effort, but there's effort. And that's a sutra of the Yoga Sutras, which I find interesting.
Yes. Yeah, I understand effort without effort to mean something like when you realize that effort can happen without a self. And this is the part that many people get really worried about, or like there's always this debate in Buddhism about is there volition or is there not volition? There are some people out there saying there's no such thing as volition. And that's patently incompatible with the teachings of karma. That is not possible. But what is possible is that there is volition, there is choice, there is effort, there is all of these things without a permanent self that is driving that, or an eternal self, or even like a whole thing that can be separated from the rest of the world.
We forgot to put the translation.
Yeah, we can put the translation.
Can
No, I'm sorry,
translate.
lo siento. Anyway, we only have a minute, so you go ahead and do what you're doing
Okay.
there. I'm going to talk to Jen. Hi, Jen. We only
Hello.
have a very brief time here, but please
Oh,
share.
maybe it's for another talk in the future. But one question I had was that, like when we're observing things, like we might say, oh, that's restlessness. And also the practice of metta in that moment to be like, oh, yeah, that's restlessness, right? Like if that kindness is like turned towards like that, there's that moment and maybe the difficulty of whatever is in that moment. I guess like a question about that. And then maybe the larger one of like what's like restlessness and remorse. Like what is like to speak more about remorse. Yeah. So that maybe is more than a minute. So I understand if that this might be something to put a pin into for something in the future.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll take 2 minutes and people will be patient. So restlessness and remorse go together. So remorse is like I did something unskillful, and I know that I did something unskillful, and that makes me agitated. Like, oh, I got to go fix it, or now I have to go tell another lie to cover up that lie, or that's the way that the agitation goes together. The restlessness and remorse go together. Which is not to say that all restlessness is because you've done something unskillful. It can be just, again, it's kind of a habit of the mind, or just a way of responding to bodily discomfort or various other things that are happening. So as for the other part, so yes, it's possible to apply kindness or apply metta to something that's bothering you, any unpleasant sensation that's happening. That said, I will say that again is kind of adding thoughts to your thoughts. So ultimately, the practice is to be able to, or I could say, the aspiration of practice is to be able to attend to any kind of Vedana, the most excruciating, agonizing, unpleasant thing, or the most blissed out of your gourd, blissed out of your mind for the translator, thing, or anything in between, as it is, just as an instant of phenomena. It comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. There's no need to add anything. It is simply a moment of phenomena that has its moment. And when its moment is gone, its moment is gone. So we can apply kindness, and we should, we can also apply some discipline. Both of those things are expressed very strongly in the suttas. And in the end, the highest teaching is the one that was given to Bahya in the most succinct way, because Bahya was approaching the Buddha at the wrong time. The Buddha says, in the herd, there will be only the herd. And in the known, there will be only the known. In the seen, there will be only the seen. And when you train yourself thus, then that is freedom. So, Dana, would you like to make the announcement, even though we're a few minutes over?
Giving to the Dassanaya Buddhist Community supports our guiding teacher, Dhammadīpā, the physical location at the vihara, and allows us to continue to offer Buddhist teachings in support of the awakening of all beings. Our support pages are on the website under the Support tab, Donate, Volunteer, or Offer Materials. And Joso, thank you for sending them in the chat. And in addition, we send a newsletter about once a month with upcoming information and a letter from our teacher. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana. And thank you, everyone who is supporting in all the myriad ways, showing up and offering all sorts of supports and contributing their time and wisdom and efforts. May our practice here today be a cause and a condition for our complete awakening, that we might all, and that all beings might all be free from every form of suffering, every form of delusion, that we all might come to know ourselves as Dhammas by the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and each one's efforts. May every being be liberated.
Gracias. Gracias, Claudia.
Gracias, Claudia.
Bye. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.